You know, people always assume that just because you're getting older, you don't understand the modern world. My grandson laughed and said, "You still use cash?" when he saw me pull out my wallet at the grocery store last week. So I smiled, took out my phone, and wired $100,000 from my secret account straight to his college fund. The look on his face was priceless, but let me tell you how I got to that moment, because my story wasn't easy, but I built something extraordinary from absolutely nothing.
Margaret saw potential in a scared kid when no one else would.
I'm Margaret Rose Thompson. I'm 68 years old, and I've been underestimated my entire life. When I was growing up in rural Alabama in the 1950s, girls like me weren't supposed to dream big. We were supposed to get married, have babies, and keep house. My daddy worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table, and my mama took in laundry to make ends meet. We didn't have much, but we had love, and we had determination running through our veins like sweet tea flows in the South. When I was 16, I told my parents I wanted to go to college. My daddy just shook his head and said, "Maggie, honey, we can't afford to send you to college. Besides, what's a girl gonna do with all that book learning?" But my mama, bless her heart, she pulled me aside that night and pressed $27 into my hand. It was everything she'd saved from her laundry money over 2 years. She whispered, "You find a way, baby girl. You find a way to make something of yourself." I worked 3 jobs through high school. I cleaned houses before school, worked at the 5 and dime after school, and babysat on weekends. Every penny went into a mason jar hidden under my mattress. By graduation, I had saved enough for 1 semester at the community college in Montgomery. It wasn't much, but it was a start. College was harder than I ever imagined. Not just the coursework, though calculus nearly broke me more than once. It was being the only girl in most of my business classes, having professors who acted like I was taking up space that belonged to a man, and working 20 hours a week at the campus cafeteria just to afford books and a shared room in the cheapest boarding house in town. I remember one particular day in my accounting class. Professor Williams called on me to solve a complex problem on the blackboard. I knew the answer, but my hands were shaking as I wrote the numbers. Some of the boys in the back were snickering, making comments about how girls weren't meant for numbers. When I got the problem right, Professor Williams seemed genuinely surprised. He said, "Well, Miss Thompson, perhaps there's hope for you yet." I wanted to cry, but instead I lifted my chin and said, "Thank you, sir. I'll take that as encouragement." That night, I sat in my tiny room, eating a dinner of crackers and peanut butter because it was all I could afford, and I made myself a promise. I was going to succeed, not just for me, but for every girl who was told she couldn't, shouldn't, or wouldn't amount to anything in the business world. After 2 years at community college, I managed to transfer to Auburn University on a partial scholarship. I majored in business administration with a focus on finance, and let me tell you, I was still the only woman in most of my classes. But by then, I'd learned to hold my own. I studied harder than anyone else, asked more questions, and never let the doubt in other people's voices become doubt in my own heart. I graduated in 1976, right in the middle of one of the worst recessions this country had seen. Jobs were scarce for everyone, but they were practically non-existent for women trying to break into finance. I applied to 43 different companies and got 43 rejection letters. Some were polite. Some were brutally honest about not wanting to hire women for serious positions. I was living back home with my parents, sleeping in my childhood bedroom, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. My daddy, who'd never quite understood my ambitions, tried to be supportive in his own way. He'd say, "Maggie, maybe it's time to consider settling down. The Henderson boy has been asking about you." But my mama would just give me that look that said, "Don't you dare give up now." The breakthrough came from the most unexpected place. I was at the bank, depositing my measly paycheck from waitressing at the local diner, when I overheard the bank manager complaining to a teller about their bookkeeper quitting without notice. Before I could lose my nerve, I walked right up to his desk and said, "Excuse me, sir, but I couldn't help overhearing. I'm a business graduate from Auburn, and I'd love to discuss the bookkeeper position." He looked me up and down like I was speaking a foreign language. "Young lady, this is serious financial work. We need someone with experience." I reached into my purse and pulled out my transcript, my letters of recommendation, and a sample financial analysis I'd done of local businesses just for practice. I laid them all out on his desk and said, "Sir, everyone needs experience to get experience. Give me 2 weeks to prove myself, and if I don't exceed your expectations, you don't owe me a penny." He hired me on a trial basis for $50 a week. $50! But it was my foot in the door, and I was determined to kick that door wide open. I worked longer hours than anyone else in that bank. I reorganized their entire filing system, caught 3 significant errors in their books that had been overlooked for months, and created detailed reports that helped them identify which loans were performing best. At the end of 2 weeks, the bank manager called me into his office. I held my breath, expecting the worst. Instead, he offered me a permanent position at $75 a week and said, "Miss Thompson, I've never been happier to be proven wrong." Within 6 months, I was promoted to assistant manager. Within 2 years, I was the youngest branch manager in the bank's history. But I had bigger dreams than managing someone else's bank. Every evening after work, I'd sit at my kitchen table, reading financial newspapers and investment guides by lamplight. I started with small investments, putting away 10% of every paycheck into stocks that I'd researched thoroughly. I made mistakes, lost money on some investments, but I learned from every failure. In 1981, I met Robert Thompson at a financial conference in Birmingham. He was a kind man, 5 years my senior, who worked as an investment advisor. What I loved most about Robert was that he never once questioned my ambitions or suggested I should be satisfied with less. When I told him about my dream of starting my own investment firm, he didn't laugh or change the subject like so many men did. Instead, he asked, "What's your timeline? And how can I help?" We married in 1982, and Robert became not just my husband but my business partner and biggest supporter. Together, we started Thompson Financial Services from our dining room table with $12,000 we'd saved between us. Our first office was a tiny space above a hardware store in downtown Montgomery. We had 2 folding chairs, a used desk Robert found at a garage sale, and a telephone with a very long cord. Finding clients was the hardest part. People didn't trust a woman with their money, especially not their retirement savings or their children's college funds. I'd make cold calls all morning, getting hung up on more often than not. I'd knock on doors of small businesses, only to be told they preferred to work with more established firms. There were days I went home feeling like I was fighting an impossible battle. But slowly, very slowly, we started to build a reputation. Our first real client was Mrs. Eleanor Johnson, a widow who'd been widowed young and needed help managing her late husband's insurance money. She took a chance on me because, as she said, "You're the only advisor who's talked to me like I have a brain in my head, instead of just patting my hand and telling me not to worry about the complicated stuff." Mrs. Johnson's portfolio grew by 30% in the first year. She told her friends, who told their friends, and word started to spread about the young woman who actually listened to her clients and delivered results. By 1985, we had enough clients to hire our first employee, a sharp young man named David who handled the administrative work, while Robert and I focused on investments and client relationships. The real turning point came in 1987, during the stock market crash that October. While other firms were panicking and making emotional decisions, I kept my head cool and my analysis sharp. I'd studied market history extensively, and I knew that crashes, while painful, were also opportunities for those brave enough and smart enough to act strategically. I called every single one of our clients personally. Not my secretary, not Robert, but me. I explained what was happening, why it was happening, and what our strategy would be moving forward. I was honest about the short-term pain, but confident about the long-term recovery. Most importantly, I gave them the choice about how to proceed, but I armed them with all the information they needed to make informed decisions. While other investment firms lost clients and went out of business, we actually gained clients. People respected the fact that I didn't sugarcoat the situation, didn't make promises I couldn't keep, and didn't disappear when things got tough. By 1990, Thompson Financial Services had grown to 23 employees and managed over $50 million in assets. But success brought new challenges. As our firm grew, I faced pressure from larger investment houses trying to buy us out or push us out of the market. There were smear campaigns questioning whether a woman could really be trusted with large amounts of money. There were attempts to steal our clients with promises of more experienced, more traditional management. The worst attack came in 1993. A competing firm spread rumors that our success was due to insider trading and that I was using my clients' money for personal gain. The accusations were completely false, but they spread like wildfire through the financial community. We lost several major clients, and for a few months, I wondered if everything we'd built was going to crumble. Robert wanted to fight back with lawyers and lawsuits, but I chose a different approach. I opened our books completely to an independent audit, invited financial journalists to investigate our practices, and held public forums where our clients could ask any questions they wanted about their investments. Transparency became our greatest weapon against the lies. The investigation cleared us completely, but more importantly, it showed our clients and the broader community that we had nothing to hide. Our client base not only recovered but grew stronger than ever. People appreciated the fact that when challenged, we didn't hide behind lawyers or deflect blame. We stood up, opened our doors, and proved our integrity through our actions. In 1995, Robert was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's disease. He was only 55 years old, and watching the love of my life slowly fade away was the hardest thing I'd ever experienced. Robert had always been my sounding board, my voice of reason when I doubted myself, and my biggest cheerleader when I needed encouragement. As his condition worsened, I had to make the painful decision to buy out his share of the business and take on the full responsibility of running Thompson Financial Services alone. There were nights I'd sit in our office after everyone else had gone home, looking at the financial reports and client portfolios, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of so many people's trust in my hands. Robert passed away in 1998, and I thought seriously about selling the business and retiring. I was 51 years old, financially secure, and emotionally exhausted. But during Robert's funeral, something happened that changed my mind. Client after client came up to me, not just to offer condolences, but to share stories about how our financial guidance had changed their lives. Mrs. Patterson told me how our investment strategy had allowed her to send all 3 of her children to college. Mr. Rodriguez shared that our retirement planning had given him the security to leave a job he hated and start his own business. Young couples talked about buying their first homes because we'd helped them build their savings systematically and responsibly. Standing in that funeral home, surrounded by people whose lives I'd touched, I realized that Thompson Financial Services was about much more than money. It was about giving people the financial security to chase their dreams, to take care of their families, and to face the future with confidence instead of fear. I threw myself back into the business with renewed purpose. I expanded our services to include financial education workshops for women, knowing firsthand how many women were intimidated by investment terminology and felt excluded from financial planning. I started a scholarship program for young women studying business and finance, remembering my own struggles to afford college. By 2000, Thompson Financial Services managed over $200 million in assets. We had offices in Montgomery, Birmingham, and Atlanta, with 47 employees. But I never forgot the personal touch that had built our reputation. I still made it a point to know every client personally, to understand their goals and fears, and to be available when they needed guidance or reassurance. The tech boom and bust of the early 2000s tested our strategies again, but by then, I'd learned that sustainable growth always beats get-rich-quick schemes. While other firms chased the latest trends and promised unrealistic returns, we stuck to solid fundamentals, diversified portfolios, and long-term thinking. Our clients weathered the storm much better than most. In 2008, when the housing market collapsed and the financial crisis hit, I was ready. I'd been warning about the housing bubble for 2 years, gradually moving our clients' money away from risky mortgage securities and into more stable investments. When the crisis hit, we were positioned not just to survive, but to help our clients take advantage of the opportunities that emerged from the chaos. That's when I made one of the smartest decisions of my career. While everyone else was panicking and selling, I saw the crisis as a chance to help regular people get into the real estate market at prices they'd never see again. I started a program where Thompson Financial Services would provide down payment assistance and financial counseling to first-time homebuyers, particularly women and minorities who had traditionally been excluded from homeownership. We partnered with local banks, real estate agents, and contractors to create a comprehensive support system. We didn't just help people buy houses. We educated them about mortgages, home maintenance, property taxes, and building equity. Over the next 5 years, we helped over 300 families achieve homeownership, and not a single one of our assisted buyers defaulted on their mortgage. By 2010, I was being invited to speak at financial conferences across the country. Harvard Business School featured our firm as a case study in sustainable growth and ethical business practices. Forbes magazine named me one of the most influential women in finance. But the recognition I treasured most came from my hometown paper, which ran a feature story titled, "From Diner Waitress to Wall Street. Montgomery's own Margaret Thompson proves dreams do come true." In 2012, at age 55, I decided it was time to step back from the day-to-day operations of Thompson Financial Services. I promoted David, who'd been with us since the early days, to Chief Executive Officer, while I remained as chairman of the board. This gave me time to focus on my philanthropic work and to spend more time with my family. My daughter Sarah had given me my first grandchild, little Michael, in 2005. Watching that baby grow into a curious, bright young boy reminded me why I'd worked so hard all those years. I wanted to leave the world a little better for the next generation. And I wanted to make sure Michael and children like him would have opportunities to chase their dreams, regardless of their background or circumstances. I established the Thompson Foundation in 2013, focusing on financial literacy education and scholarships for underprivileged students. We started with a modest budget of $500,000, but as Thompson Financial Services continued to grow and prosper, our foundation's resources grew as well. The foundation's programs now reach over 10,000 students each year. We teach basic financial skills in high schools, provide college scholarships to deserving students, and offer microgrants to help young entrepreneurs start their first businesses. Seeing young people light up when they understand compound interest or realize they can actually afford college reminds me why this work matters so much. Michael grew up hearing stories about his grandmother's business adventures, but like most kids, he was more interested in video games and sports than financial planning. As he got older, though, he started asking more thoughtful questions about money, investing, and business. I loved these conversations because they reminded me of my own curiosity at his age. When Michael turned 16, I offered to match whatever he could save for his first car. I expected him to save maybe a few $100s from his part-time job at the local grocery store. Instead, he surprised me by saving over $3,000 in 8 months. He'd not only worked extra hours but had also started a small lawn mowing business in his neighborhood and sold handmade crafts online. When I presented him with the matching $3,000, he looked at the check and said, "Grandma, instead of buying a car right now, could you help me invest this money for college?" That moment, I knew he'd inherited the Thompson financial gene, and I couldn't have been prouder. But it was last week's incident at the grocery store that really showed me how much the world has changed, and how some things have stayed exactly the same. Michael, now 22, and in his senior year at Auburn University studying computer science, was visiting for the weekend. We'd gone to the grocery store together to pick up ingredients for Sunday dinner. At the checkout line, I pulled out my wallet to pay for our groceries. It's an old habit from decades of carefully managing money, and I still like the tangible feeling of cash transactions for everyday purchases. Michael laughed and said, "Grandma, you still use cash? Everything's digital now. Look, I can pay with my phone, my watch, even my car key has a payment chip." The young cashier giggled and said, "My grandmother's the same way. She doesn't trust all this new technology." I smiled politely, but inside, I was thinking about how assumptions can be so limiting. Just because I choose to use cash doesn't mean I don't understand technology. Just because I'm 68 doesn't mean I'm stuck in the past. So I pulled out my smartphone, opened my banking app, and right there in the checkout line, I transferred $100,000 from what Michael didn't know was my emergency gift fund into his college savings account. The notification sound on his phone made him check his banking app, and his face went completely white. "Grandma?" he whispered. "Did you just... Is this real?" The cashier's mouth dropped open when she saw Michael's phone screen. Other customers started looking over, wondering what was happening. I just smiled and said, "Michael, honey, never assume you know everything about someone based on how they choose to pay for groceries. That $100,000 represents more than just money. It's the result of 50 years of careful saving, smart investing, and building a business from nothing. It's proof that a girl from rural Alabama who was told she'd never amount to anything could create generational wealth for her family. It's a statement that age and wisdom shouldn't be underestimated just because they come in a package that prefers cash over digital payments. But more than anything, it was a teaching moment. Not just for Michael, but for everyone in that store who heard the story. Success isn't always flashy or obvious. Sometimes the most successful people are the ones who live modestly, save consistently, and invest wisely over decades, rather than chasing quick wins or showing off their wealth. That night at dinner, Michael asked me to tell him the whole story of how I built Thompson Financial Services. As I shared the details of those early struggles, the setbacks, the small victories, and the gradual building of something substantial, I could see him understanding that success isn't just about the destination. It's about the journey, the lessons learned along the way, and the people you help along the path. Today, Thompson Financial Services manages over $800 million in assets. We have offices in 6 states and employ over 200 people. The Thompson Foundation has awarded over $15 million in scholarships and grants. But I'm most proud of the individual lives we've touched, the dreams we've helped people achieve, and the financial security we've provided to thousands of families. I still go to the office twice a week, not because I have to, but because I love mentoring the young advisors and staying connected to the business I built from scratch. I still meet with long-term clients who've become friends over the decades. And I still get excited when I see a young person discover that they can take control of their financial future with the right knowledge and determination. Michael has decided to minor in business along with his computer science degree. He talks about maybe starting a fintech company that could make investment advice more accessible to young people. I love his enthusiasm and his ideas, and I've promised to be his first investor if he decides to pursue that dream. The secret account that funded Michael's surprise isn't really secret. It's just separate. Over the years, I've maintained several different investment accounts for different purposes. There's the foundation account, the emergency fund, the family gift fund, and my personal retirement savings. Each account has its own investment strategy based on its intended use and timeline. The Family Gift Fund is money I've set aside specifically to help my children and grandchildren achieve their goals. Whether it's Michael's college education, Sarah's dream of opening her own design studio, or future grandchildren I haven't met yet, I want to provide opportunities without creating dependency. The key is knowing when and how to help so that the gift empowers rather than enables. Looking back on my 68 years, I'm amazed at how far I've traveled from that 16-year-old girl in Alabama who dreamed of something bigger than the small world she knew. The path wasn't always smooth, and there were times I wondered if I was crazy to think I could succeed in a field dominated by men who didn't believe women belonged there. But every obstacle taught me something valuable. Every setback made me more determined. Every small victory gave me the confidence to reach for something bigger. And every person who believed in me, from my mama who gave me those first $27 to Robert who supported my dreams, to the clients who trusted me with their financial futures, contributed to the woman I became. The most important lesson I've learned is that success isn't just about accumulating wealth or achieving recognition. True success is about using your talents and resources to make a positive difference in the world. It's about creating opportunities for others, sharing your knowledge, and leaving things better than you found them. When I transferred that money to Michael's account, I wasn't just giving him financial support for college. I was giving him a lesson in the power of long-term thinking, careful planning, and never underestimating people based on surface appearances. I was showing him that real wealth isn't about flashy displays, but about having the resources to help the people you love and support the causes you believe in. I hope that someday, when Michael is my age, he'll have his own moment of surprising someone who underestimated him. Maybe it'll be his own grandchild who thinks he's too old to understand some new technology. And maybe he'll remember the day his grandmother taught him that wisdom and capability don't have expiration dates. The grocery store incident has become a family legend already. Sarah called me laughing after Michael told her the story, saying she wished she'd been there to see everyone's faces. My son-in-law jokes that he's going to be extra nice to me from now on, just in case I have any other secret accounts lying around. But the real impact of that moment goes beyond the laughter and the family stories. It's reminded all of us that we should never stop learning about each other, never stop growing, and never assume we know the full story of someone's life based on limited observations. As I sit here in my home office, looking at the framed photo of Robert and me on the day we opened our first real office space, I'm filled with gratitude for the journey that brought me to this point. The scared 16-year-old who counted pennies to afford one semester of college never could have imagined the life that awaited her. But dreams have a funny way of growing when you nurture them with hard work, persistence, and faith in yourself. What started as a desperate hope for something better than the limited options I saw around me grew into a business empire, a foundation that helps thousands of people, and a family legacy that will continue long after I'm gone. The secret to my success wasn't really secret at all. It was showing up every day, treating people with respect, making decisions based on solid principles rather than emotions, and never letting other people's limitations become my own. It was learning from failures, celebrating small victories, and always keeping my eyes on the long-term goal, even when short-term setbacks threatened to derail my progress. Most importantly, it was remembering that money is just a tool. The real value comes from what you do with that tool. How you use it to create opportunities, solve problems, and make life better for the people around you. Whether I was helping a young couple buy their first home, funding a scholarship for a deserving student, or surprising my grandson with a gift that will change his future, the satisfaction has always come from the impact, not the numbers in the account. So the next time someone sees me paying with cash and assumes I don't understand modern technology, I'll just smile and remember that the best secrets are the ones that allow you to surprise people in the most wonderful ways. And who knows? Maybe someday I'll surprise them too.